of the Elrod well, which we refer to as the Key well, uh, in the central portion of the basin. And this is the hydrograph from basically October 2023 to today, or yesterday at least. And what we've noticed is the pattern of when we start to get some precipitation, we start to see a decrease in pumping and a start of a jump ramp, if you will, of water levels starting to recover with that lack of pumping. And shortly thereafter, usually at about a 30-day window past those significant storms, then we start to see the rise in the groundwater levels as more of a distinct recharge pattern. It is nice to have seen the nadir of the water year. That is the lowest point, which we can now hindcast to January 23rd, 2025, when the depth to water in that key well was 108.54 feet. It's come up almost 5 feet to 103.70 as of yesterday, and we estimate that to be about 80% of basin capacity and 64,000 acre feet of water in storage. What's it doing budgetarily speaking? Based on our flow measurements yesterday, Gridley coming in at 0.35 CFS, Thatcher at 0.2 CFS, Reeves 0.26, outflow on Montgomery at Creek Road 0.5 CFS, outflow in the main section of San Antonio Creek 4.19 CFS, Senior Canyon at the Ladera Bridge 0.88 CFS, dry at McNell, dry at Stewart, for a total summary inflow of 1.69 CFS. The summary outflow is 3 units higher than that, 4.69 CFS. And of course, these are disconnected as the main inflow portions are recharging the main portion of the basin, but for those in the far west, and that's where the discharge is coming out of the upper saturated zone. A tour of what this all looks like in the photographic sense. Up at that measurement point at Ladera Road, that's where we typically measure that inflow on Senior Canyon, right under the bridge. At Thatcher Creek, we have our friend still staying there underneath in his tent, and the flow is cascading down the abutment there. We actually have flow continuing at the confluence of Senior Canyon and Gridley over the dry road crossing. Nice to see that. That's making its way to the basin. And where that water discharges, it's not continuously flowing right now, although it was for a brief period of time following the storms in February of 2025. This is where that groundwater daylights out of the perch system. Done a number of different ways of showing where this is. Photographically, there on the left, and in GPS, at least Google Images phone technology, where the blue dot is on the right, and then where the camera icon is in the lower right-hand corner. Very similar to the last couple of months. Where Montgomery Creek exits the basin area underneath Creek Road. This is the little culvert great for measurement. That's that half CFS flowing through there. And the main portion of the basin outflow point on San Antonio Creek. This is about that 4.19 CFS. That's what that number looks like. And then where San Antonio Creek exits at Old Creek Road Bridge, you see the county's radar gauge there on the left, and it's pretty well culled out from last month's photograph. The storms did a great job of removing a lot of dead wood and debris in these channels. Now, here's where the baby drill baby comes into play. We have 2 wells that have been drilled or are in the process of being drilled in the Ojai Basin. This image is the one of the Combs well at 300 Boardman Road. This is permitted by the OBGMA as a water well, and the city of Ojai as it is in the city limits. And there's a couple interesting things in this myriad of graphics. The photograph on the left that I took yesterday was when they were just finishing drilling prior to pulling out the the drill string, and in the foreground is the Stewart or Fox drainage that just before it goes underneath the first bridge at Montgomery. This is in the Persimmon Hill area. Um, that drill rig is has advanced to about 300 feet with its drill rod, and you can see the flowing creek right there in the foreground. Now, geologically, just downstream from this photograph is the upper right-hand image, and that's where we have some terrace deposits and a mix of some fine sands and clays as that reddish hue, and a little boulder layer in the middle, unconformably tilting basinward, actually. And we interpret this as part of the perching clays that maintain the uppermost saturated water uh, aquifers on the west side of the basin. In the foreground of that image is also that same creek, just about 200 yards downstream. Uh, this is important because one would think, oh gosh, they're drilling a water well right next to this creek. That must be drying the creek. Well, not necessarily, because that is associated with the surface water is more associated with the uppermost saturated zone interval. And the OBGMA has instituted an ordinance that requires that uppermost saturated zone to be sealed out, which means that yesterday, when they ran this geophysical log in the lower right-hand corner of this image, we're able to really identify where that is. And these really jive well with the cuttings that I was able to review and actually have with me, but have not put into a display case yet. I think I'll be able to share that next month. Uh, if you haven't seen an e-log in a while, or ever, what these are, they're geophysical wireline downhole electrical logging survey tools. And this is when a wire line tool goes down to the bottom of a fluid-filled borehole and measures the geophysical properties thereof. We have the radioactivity as measured in the gamma ray curve. We have the self-potential, which is an indication of porosity, very similar to the gamma ray curve in the black there, labeled SP, and the more familiar resistivity curves. There's a short normal, RSN, that's blue, and the dashed red line is the RLN, or resistivity long normal. Those curves represent how resistive the fluid is to the electrical current. Picture the e-logging tool with a cathode on the top and an anode on the bottom, creating an electrical field that is measured as the tool is lowered downhole or raised uphole, and that short normal is a 16-inch separation or sphere, and the long normal is 64-inch separation or sphere. So the long normal measures what's going on out in the aquifer closer to what's going into the borehole is the short normal. These two curves track very well, which would stand to reason because the aquifer that they're targeting and the fluid they use to mix the drilling mud actually came from the Ojai Basin too. So it's very similar water quality and characteristics that we're measuring. As the short normal curve goes to the right and resistivity increases, resistivity being the opposite of conductivity, conductive waters will be salty, resistive water will be fresh. Likewise, clays tend to be conductive and gravels tend to be more resistive. So when this curve kicks over to the right, we have a very resistive freshwater aquifer, typically of gravels and sands. And as it goes over to the left, as this curve does from about 100 to 150 feet, we have a clay. And that clay we interpret as the perching zone of the southwest uppermost saturated zone. Now, what this means for the OBGMA is that for the ordinance, we require that to be sealed out. So this well will have a seal that goes down at least 130 feet, possibly as deep as 150, to meet the requirements of the OBGMA permit and the verification and the ordinance. The casing itself will look something like this, with a zone that extracts the water from 170 to 190 feet, and then also from about 210 to 270. That deepest portion of the aquifer, or the borehole at least, from about 270 to 300, appears to have some porous material, but it's also poor quality. One of the things about Persimmon Hill is that folks would drill deep thinking to get more water and better quality of it, and found that neither were true. If they got quality, they didn't have the quantity. And if they had the quantity, they didn't have the quality. Those deep zones are saltier. And a lot of folks blamed it on the dairy farm that was there once upon a time. But alas, I think it's a natural phenomenon as you get deeper into that basin portion. In fact, that 270, 280, 290, and 300 foot sample were very greenish in hue and often indicative of resistive conditions and potentially bedrock at that point. And that's our interpretation of that. We'll share with those the cuttings next week. Over on the east end, the OBGMA permitted a well 3552 Reeves Road, and I think that's the correct address. And the issue here was the proximity to Reeves Creek and a potential groundwater dependent ecosystem as identified by DUDEC in the review of the application here. So it was required that we have a representative there to witness the upper 60 feet or so of drilling and see if we could find that clay stratum that extends at least this far east, or correlations and detailed evaluation of old well logs. So the driller spudded this with a 6-inch diameter drill bit shown there on the upper left. You can see the relative proximity of the creek to the drill rig in the lower right. The drill rig is not towered up here, but you can see that reddish piece of equipment hiding behind that oak tree to the left, just on the opposite side of Reeves Road. That's where they're drilling. Pretty close to the creek, just on the north side of the property line. And once they drilled, we were able to log gravels down to about 36 feet, and then this clay shown in the rolled out plastic hand sample, literally in the lower left-hand corner, that goes down from about 36 to 46 feet and represents what we interpret as the perching layer of the south, and in this case east, uppermost saturated zone. So if there were to be a connection between the location of this borehole and that potential groundwater dependent ecosystem, would probably be in the gravels that are from 0 to 36 feet, as opposed to the deeper production zone. So to meet that requirement, we recommended, and I believe was approved by general manager, that we have a 54-foot deep conductor casing that is cemented in place, and that isolates the rest of the material below from the zone that would correlate to the potential groundwater dependent ecosystem. So a couple of baby wells, baby drill, baby. What do we got going on in the forecast here? This is the NOAA's climatic prediction for what we've got coming up in March, April, May. Not a bright miracle, but I'll take equal chances of average. It could be a fairly decent March for precipitation. Graphically, I like sharing this. Last month, the National Drought Mitigation Center program out of the University of Nebraska puts out short-term drought conditions. Things look a little bit better on the short term than they did this time last month, owing obviously to the rain that we had in early February and mid-February. Conditions, not as dire or extreme, probably more in the moderate to abnormally dry conditions locally. However, the longer term composite, say for the past year, puts us in a much better light, where we're still pretty wet. And that would stand to reason with what we're seeing literally on and under the ground. So thank you very much. I appreciate the attention. If there's any questions, happy to
Thank you,
go back
Jordan.
to any slide.
Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? All right. Okay, thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
Director Finch has to leave soon, so I'd like to move to the action item 8B. If Julia Dudek is ready to make a presentation.
Yes, if I could introduce Devin Pritchard Peterson from DUDEC. He's going to share his screen and go through the highlights of our annual groundwater report.
Yeah, thank you, Julia. Give me a sec to pull it up. All right. Can you all see the slides?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so the annual report, this is for water year 2024, and a draft of the report is included in the board packet. I'm just going to give a quick presentation, high-level overview of a few sections, key sections of the annual report. So Jordan was just giving a real-time update on basin conditions, but this is looking back at water year 2024, which is October 1st of 2023 to September 30th of 2024. So an annual report is required by the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act every year after the adoption of a GSP. The annual report is an opportunity to provide an update on basin conditions, including trends in groundwater levels, water use, and groundwater and storage, as well as an opportunity to discuss GSP implementation progress, projects and management actions that are being implemented as part of the GSP. So the general sections of the annual report are as shown on the slides. So as I mentioned, this is a water year 2024 annual report for October 1st, 23 to September 30th, 2024. And when summarizing the conditions over that water year, we look at the spring high being represented by March measurements and the fall low being represented by October measurements. For purposes of this water year 2024 annual report, however, September measurements were used in place of October to represent the fall low, and that is because the majority of wells were monitored in September as opposed to October for this water year.
So there, when you refer to October, you're referring to October of 24?
October of 2023
Okay.
to September of 2024 is the water year,
Is the next
2024.
Yeah, no, I couldn't tell by the sentence.
And so water year 2024, based on the classification we have in the GSP and annual report, was considered an average water year, although it was about above average in the sense that the total precipitation received was about 30 inches, and the long-term average from the early 1900s to present is about 20 inches. So it was still a above average year in precip, quite a bit of precip. And as you would assume, basin responded favorably, and as Jordan has presented, many wells were artesian, and in the key wells, which are these representative monitoring points that are monitored to keep a tab on basin conditions and how much groundwater is in the basin. The water levels in these wells were at least 30 to several hundred feet above the minimum thresholds established in the groundwater sustainability plan. So the basin was very full in water year 2024. And now looking at water use, the primary sources of water in the basin are groundwater produced from the basin and then imported water from Lake Casitas. And in water year 2024, there was about 3,800 acre feet pumped from the basin and about 1,200 acre feet of Lake Casitas water imported and used in the basin. And if we look at a breakdown of how that groundwater was used, about 50% of the groundwater was used for agricultural purposes, and 40% was for the Ojai water system, municipal and domestic use. And then there was another portion that was used for domestic purposes by private pumpers, and a small sliver for other municipal industrial use, bringing the total water use to about 5,000 acre feet in water year 2024, which was very similar to the previous water year of 2023 in both total use and in the use of groundwater and imported surface water. It should be noted that since the last annual report, the groundwater production for water years 2023 and even previous years has been updated. So these are the most recent totals for water use in the basin for those previous water years, and the same could be expected for water year 2024 as additional reporting takes place. Now looking at groundwater and storage. Groundwater and storage in the basin is estimated using a linear regression between the Ojai Basin groundwater model, the numerical flow model, and the key well in the basin, which is the Elrod well, or a well immediately adjacent to the Elrod well, identified as 5L8S. Water levels in that well correspond very closely to what is simulated by the groundwater model. And so using that correlation based on the spring groundwater elevation at that well, it's estimated that in water year 2024, groundwater and storage in the basin increased by about 6,000 acre feet. And looking back from when the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act was enacted in 2014, groundwater and storage has increased by about 18,000 acre feet in the basin. So the increase in water year 2024 was fairly similar to water year 2023, both years receiving quite a bit of precipitation above the mean. Lastly, the annual report has a section on groundwater sustainability plan implementation progress. These are the projects and management actions that OBGMA has committed to implementing to continue managing the basin sustainably, ensure it's continued to be sustainable. So in water year 2024, many of these projects were initiated or are ongoing projects that are going to take several years. But the projects that are currently being implemented include the development of a new data management system to store the extraction data, groundwater levels, groundwater quality, the preparation of a groundwater sampling and analysis plan. I believe a draft was prepared last summer and is going to be finalized very soon here in the new year, in the coming months. And that plan will outline and standardize sampling procedures for groundwater levels and quality and stream flow. Also, OBGMA has continued to review and improve the existing extraction metering program to try to capture all of the extraction that's occurring in the basin to the best of the ability. There's been continued monthly monitoring of surface water and groundwater conditions in the basin. The county has continued to monitor wells in the basin. All of that is used to keep a pulse on basin conditions. And lastly, OBGMA continues to look for and identify opportunities for future GSP funding grants and other opportunities. These projects and management actions, some of them require more funds than others, so the opportunities for any sort of grant funding is definitely important. And lastly, compliance with general SGMA reporting and submittal deadlines. Every spring and fall, groundwater levels for the wells monitored in the basin need to be uploaded to the Sigma data portal. And so that is coordinated in June and January of each year. And then the public can log on to the online databases and see how the groundwater level trends look at the various wells in the basin. And that is all I have to present. The rest of the information is in the annual report, and happy to take any questions that anyone may have.
All right, thank you. Any members of the board have questions? Anyone in the public have questions?
From this point, we'll get, this says, draft on it. So if there aren't any comments or revisions anybody has, we will get this wrapped up and submit it to DWR by the deadline of April 1st.
So do we take an action on this and approve it now, or
You certainly can.
do I have a motion?
Make a motion, we approve.
Call the roll.
Director Daddy?
Yes.
Director Gilman?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Felke?
Yes.
Chair Hages?
Yes. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Devin.
Well, the next item is public comments on items that do not appear on today's agenda. Do we have any comments? Okay, next item is the consent agenda, financial report for January and minutes of the January meeting.
I second.
Call the roll.
Director Daddy?
Yes.
Director Gilman?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Felke?
Yes.
Chair Hages?
Yes. Item 8A is OBGMA 2025 holiday schedule. Julia?
Yeah, so I mentioned this at our last meeting that we really needed to have a formal holiday schedule for staff so that they know what days are getting paid for and which ones they are not. So I prepared this. It basically duplicates the typical holidays for public agencies in California. It's the same as Casitas's holiday schedule. It really only affects Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays when our office is open and when our part-time staff is there in the office. So this just gives them some clarification on what holidays they'll get paid for.
Questions or comments? Yes.
Second.
Call the roll.
Director Daddy?
Yes.
Director Gilman?
Yes.
Director Finch? Yes. Director Felke? Yes. Chair Hages?
Yes. Okay, discussion items. 9A, Legislative Ad Hoc Committee. Do we have any updates on that?
The committee didn't meet, but I did attend the small groundwater sustainability agency committee on February 6th, and they mentioned a few of those agencies met with DWR to talk again about compliance with the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act and the financial impact it has on small agencies, and getting some assistance, financial assistance specifically for complying with all the requirements. And they are planning to pursue as a group regulatory and legislative relief through their elected representatives. So there will be more coming out of that group as time goes by. Maybe a Sigma update down the road.
Okay. Item 9A, the Meter Compliance Ad Hoc Committee.
Yes, I have things to tell you about that. At the last meeting, I reported out about the compliance letters that we had sent out. So I do have an update on that. Out of Group A, we had sent out originally 44 letters for non-compliance with having meters. We had a handful of people, about a dozen or so, request an exemption from that for various reasons. And so Peter, our counsel, is working on an exemption process for that. I did have 5 people ask for an extension, a 30-day extension from the 90 days that we gave them. So I granted that. We had the majority of the rest install meters and comply. We have 2 remaining who we have not heard from at all. And those are the ones that we sent notices that there will be a board hearing at the next board meeting on March 27th. And I will prepare a memo, recommending the board take some kind of action for penalties or fees. And they've been notified, they were sent registered mail. We did get the cards back that they were delivered, so we have met our obligations to notify them for that hearing. There was a group B that we discovered as we went through and audited the database. We sent out 14 first notices. 5 of them have installed meters already. One is going to be requesting an exemption, and the other 8 will have second notices go out on Monday. So there's kind of two tracks going of getting people to install meters. But what we have found is it was effective. I think it was very much a worthwhile exercise to send those out. We have fielded a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, got the database updated. And I feel like it was very productive.
So for next month's hearing, we only have 2?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I think on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you and Cece for doing a great job. I mean, this really turned out to be successful, and you as well. Far more successful than I thought it would be, so.
Question?
Yes.
Julia, how many properties are shy of meters?
Well, right now, we've got the ones that probably want an exception. There might be, I would say 15 of those. And then another 10 or so that we haven't heard from yet. So maybe 25 out of the 150 wells.
Well, that's significant progress.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of progress. Jordan, are you waving or raising your hand? Or both?
I'm clapping to
Oh,
echo
okay.
Director Daddy's appreciation for your efforts in this. This is something that's really slipped through the cracks for a long time, and
Yeah.
it's nice to see, the kind of response you've gotten, and really, saving time and money in in pursuing this the way that we did, as opposed to needing to have that special extra meeting, which was, of course, an expense of the agency. So, kudos to you.
Agreed. Yeah. And it also, speaking to the annual report and all the monitoring that we do, we will get better data, out of this. What we have found too is when people send in a photo of their meter, we've realized that they weren't reading it correctly. So we can teach them there's some education along with this also on teaching people how to read their meters, so that when we do get their statements in, we have confidence that we're getting good numbers.
Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you very much. Just a reminder.
Please, sorry, I just wanted to make sure you're aware, next month's meeting, we are pushing the regular board meeting to 4 o'clock, and the hearing for these last 2 meters will be at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Just to give those 2 participants, an opportunity to come at the end of their workday, potentially make it more convenient for them. If I do hear from them in the meantime and they get a meter installed, then maybe that will go away, but I'm not optimistic about that yet. We'll just see what happens. But please note those updated times.
All right, anything else? Any other comments from the board? Hearing none, we're adjourned at 4:05. Not bad for a delay.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Oh.